All right, so now that we've learned some basics of using JSX, let's talk about encapsulation. Encapsulation is an important concept in any coding language. It's a way of organizing our code. It's a way of making sure things are contained where they need to be contained. And how encapsulation works with React is generally you want to encapsulate specific things into their own components. Now, what you saw here was I used a function and I was able to pass in a list down here. But let's say I wanted to make a whole table or something like that. So let's make a table in a separate component. And the way we can do that is we can do that within the same file, but it's going to become unorganized very quickly. So generally we want to create a separate file for that. And for all of your separate components, you'll at the source level, we'll right click on source rather than on app. We're going to right click source, and I'm going to say new folder called components. And let's create a new file in here called mytable.tsx. And by the way, I didn't mention this before, but .tsx is TypeScript JSX. So this means that this is both a TypeScript file and a JSX file. Since we're using TypeScript for typing things, wow, that was weird. Okay, we want to use .tsx for our extensions. All right, so I have my table here. Now, just like in page.tsx, I want to start off with this line here, export default function. And since I'm going to be creating a component, I have to use a capital letter at the beginning. It's just a rule that React has when you're creating components and you want to use them as components. So we'll say my table, but it's going to be treated just like any other function. So let's just return a real basic table here. And if you remember how to do tables, we started out with the table opening and closing tag. We start off with a T head, which is the head of our table, a T body. So I have the head and the body, and I create a table row in here, TR. And then inside of here, I create my cells. So we'll say, call 1, copy this out. Let's make 3 columns for now. Call 2, call 3, and then let's go ahead and copy this whole row, and I'm just going to create a few rows inside of here, and we'll say we'll just we'll leave this like this for now. It's going to be a mess. Okay, there we go. Prettier made it a little bit nicer. We can keep these on the same row, but essentially we have our table header, and then let's do this. Row 1, call 1, row 1, call 2, row 1, call 3, and then we'll just repeat this. Actually, let's do it this way. Oops. I'll say 2, 2, 2, and then we'll go 3, 3, 3. And what is wrong here? td / I need an opening tr. There we go. Okay, so now I have my table here that's being returned, and I want to use this table in my other file in page.tsx. So how do I do that? Well, let's go back to page.tsx and let's import that. Because I'm exporting it here, I can import it in my other file in page.tsx. So we'll say import my table. Now, it'll actually help you out. This will help with it, but I want to do it just to kind of demonstrate how we navigate to it. If I do ... then that goes up a directory. So since I'm here, I want to go up to the source folder from the app. So I go up to source with ... and then to components, which is here, and then back down to my table. I don't have to put the file extension on. Normally when you're doing Node.js stuff and you're importing and you use module notation, you would have to do that, but I don't have to do that in this case. Another thing is if I didn't use this keyword default, if I took this out and I go back over here, now I get this red squiggly and it says did you mean to use import my table? So let's say I have a file that I have multiple modules I want to export, multiple components or variables or whatever that I want to export and be able to import into other places. I might not have a default, or this might not be a default. If that's the case, I can have multiple things imported or whatever. Basically, if I want to import something that is not the default, I wrap it in these curly brackets, and that's the import notation. But with this component, I do want it to be the default, so I'm going to leave this like this, and I'm going to go ahead and add default back to here. Whoops. Default here, and everything's good now. And now how do I add my table that I created here? I don't need to use JSX. I can actually just use it like it's an HTML. I just created a custom HTML element, basically. And all this is saying here, this is a self-enclosing tag on a, it means that there's no children inside. So main, this has a bunch of children inside. H2, this is the children of that. But in this case, it's self-enclosing. There's a few like images, image, src, blah, blah, my image dot gif or whatever. You would want to do a self-enclosing on that, or if you're doing line break like with BR, you would self-enclose that. So this isn't just the case with custom components, but also built-in HTML. If it's a self-enclosing one, you put a slash at the end, and that just indicates that there doesn't need to be this closing part of it. It doesn't even have an open. It doesn't need to have an open and a close. It's self-enclosing. So this is a self-enclosing component. And now my table should be in here. And there it is. There's my table that I created. It's not great, but it's something. It's a table. But the thing is, when I use this function here, I was able to pass in a variable. What if I actually want to pass something into my table? What if I want to pass data into my table? Well, that will be what the topic of the next video is.